best lineup of all time, going on right now until Halloween. And the road leads to nowhere, and the castle stays the same, and the father tells the mother, wait for the rain, wait for the rain. What's up, everybody? Welcome to PCP Movie Night. Happy Horrorfest. We are now on the verge of October, and everybody's getting excited about spooky movie season. But y'all, it's a way of life for us, and we've been doing this for a month and a half. So let's celebrate by really kicking it up. The bloodiest, most transgressive Horrorfest movie lineup of all time. And if you don't believe me, go check out the show I did with Spilio and Verno yesterday on Blood Splatter Chatter, talking about Necromantic. But tonight we're talking about The Last House on the Left, the horror feature film directorial debut of legendary master of horror, Wes Craven. Not his first movie, because he had done some other work, but typically IMDb doesn't count those kind of movies. But this is what we're talking about tonight. The Last House on the Left, one of my favorite movies. If you want to help support the channel, I like to throw a link where you can support PCP and buy the movie, but this is now out of print in the US, right? But you can get the Region B Blu-ray if you got a region-free player. There is a link in the description below to check it out. Very odd that the European version is available now, not the American version, because it was opposite when it first came out. Anyway, this is a film that I think is very important that I've been wanting to cover here for a while. And we got a great panel lined up to talk about this film, including from Go Figure Reviews, the CBC Award-nominated Go Figure Reviews. It's Jelani. What's up, my man?
Hey, Station. So glad to be here to talk about one of the craziest movies I ever watched when I was younger. This was an accidental watch, and it still freaks me out to this day. So can't wait to talk about it.
Hell yeah. Speaking of Go Figure Reviews, the better half is Brooks. What is up, my man? How you doing? First time watch for you, right?
Yep, first time.
Cannot wait to hear your thoughts on that. Speaking of first timer, we're also popping The Last House on the Left cherry of Stu from Dr. Doom's fan club. What's up, my man?
Station guys. So glad to be here with y'all. Looking forward to it.
Hell yeah. And my fellow vomit brother from yesterday, it's Verno from Blood Splatter Chatter. What is up?
I love it, man. I love it. Happy to be here. You're right, man. This was a lot easier to watch after watching Necromantic. It was a breeze. So
yeah,
stoked to talk about it.
And I'm sure that this dude has seen this at some film festival at some point, somewhere randomly in New York or something like that. But let's bring in Joey Ducks Corallo, everybody.
Thank you. And yes, I have seen this on the big screen.
Of course.
Why wouldn't you have?
That's why we love you, Joe. Like you live the cinematic, you live the cinematic life that we all want right here, man. I'll tell you, man.
It's true.
This I don't think this is ever played on the big screen in Huntsville, Alabama.
Never.
Personally, I don't think so.
Not even once.
Possible, yeah.
I don't know why they didn't do a 50th anniversary screening a couple years ago. But let's get into it. It is the first movie by Wes Craven, he had done adult film work beforehand. So did the producer of this film, Sean Cunningham. So this movie didn't just kick off Wes Craven, who was going to be responsible for Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, right? But also Sean Cunningham, who went on to kickstart the not only Friday the 13th franchise, but the House franchise. Maybe not as well known as some of the other ones that we just talked about, but House 2 is great, but he did the first one. I love this movie. I think this movie's really, really great, dude. I really do. It's a hard movie to watch. That's what you'll hear a lot of people say. I don't think it's as hard to watch when you watch it after Necromantic or you talk about it after that movie. There's a lot more gnarlier films, but in 1972, we cannot discount what it was like to see this film. This was a movie that on the title alone and the marketing campaign of it's only a movie, it's only a movie, it's only a movie, which was stolen from another movie. And this plot is stolen from another movie. Wes Craven wanted to do a little bit of a remake of Ingrid Bergman's The Virgin Spring. This is the exact same movie as that, just a little bit more real in a Vietnam era, right? Wes Craven had said, you know, I wanted to do something. We wanted to make a horror movie because that's what you did. You make cheap horror movies. You can make money doing that. And that they were trying to make money, right? And Wes was like, I wanted to kind of talk about how Hollywood kind of glorifies violence, right? Like he was talking in particular about like the Man with No Name trilogy, the Sergio Leone movies, right? And how like you don't really feel the repercussions or the reality of the violence and the brutality in those films. And he wanted to do a movie where he did that. And this movie came out and it was a huge sensation. It kickstarted something that led eventually to things like Black Christmas and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween. I know those things probably would have happened on their own, but if you can't accept the influence of this movie on those and just the way that it impacted an audience, and then Wes Craven and Sean Cunningham were kind of like blacklisted for a little bit from making films. People thought they were like doing the devil's work. They were disgusting, that they themselves were murderers and rapists and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's a rather profound and impactful and important exploration on violence. I'm a big fan of this movie. So we're talking about it. So Jelani, Last House on the Left, it's not your first go round at the Last House on the Left. So what do you think about this film overall, especially on the rewatch?
I will say, I'll start off by saying it is very shocking. When I saw it the first time, and I saw it like, this was my Hollywood video days, so that's like 2001, 2002. It was totally on accident because I was like, ooh, Wes Craven. I was on horror kick. I was on Japanese horror kick. So, I was watching movies with Robbie, watching movies on my own. And I found this one and I was like, well, and I think you probably said something to me about this. I'm not sure or not, but it was like, this is the first.
If you asked me about it, I would have been like, bro, you got to watch it.
You got to watch it. Yeah. So I took it home and it was VHS, of course. And I sat down and I watched this film. By the way, can't believe they had it there with all the things that were going on. It depicts scenes of rape, murder, horrible. I mean, it's just it feels, and it's kind of light now the way we talk about things, about how it's casually done nowadays. But this was like serious. This was like really messed up. Like I'm guessing for 1972, it's really messed up. But for me, seeing it for the first time, then it kind of disturbed me. Like it's just, especially, well, there's one scene that we will talk about that still fucking bothers me. It's reminiscent of Teeth, so it's one of those things. But yeah. Among other, yeah.
We still got to review Teeth, man.
No, we can't. No,
one of my favorite moments of my life is sitting down Jelani to watch Teeth with him having no idea what that movie was about. I was I loved it. It was so exciting.
Never, I will never watch that movie again. We can talk about it, but you'll talk about my first experience with it. I will not see it again. But with this movie, it's shocking. It's one of those things that if I couldn't show this to my parents kind of situation. And it's that uncomfortable nature that makes it so intriguing. as we go into this film, we're going to talk about stuff, and it's all uncomfortable to me in some form or fashion. But the one thing that we need to talk about is the music, because we will talk about the music, but it's so inappropriate for what's going on. It's a lot of inappropriate, like it's happy, jaunting music, but we're going to talk about that. That's the only off thing that I have about this movie, other than it needed the music, the score, and the soundtrack needed to be more sinister than what it was. That's the only thing that irks me about this movie, especially watching it again. I've seen this this is my third time watching it, I want to say. So it's one of those movies that still bothers me, and it does make its impact. And wow, freaking wow! That's all I got to say. Else, that's it.
Freaking wow! All right, Brooks, your first time watching this film. I know you didn't watch a lot of these movies that I always had everybody watch because you weren't really a horror guy. We've turned you a little bit into a horror guy. I want to know, what did you think about Last House on the Left?
I don't like it, but I get what he's doing with it, but I still just don't like this movie. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't set with me right. Like, and it's not I know horrible things are just part of a movie's plot, sometimes, but like it has I feel like it could have been done more. Just like the best parts of this movie, I found the parts where I was actually most entertained was just the parts with the doofus cops. And it's like a whole different movie. It's like it switches to a comedy all of a sudden.
The origin story of fucking Kreese from Karate Kid, isn't it?
He went to Nom right after this.
So like you have this fucked up thing with these like 4 criminals going, and then all of a sudden it cuts these 2 goober cops who can't do fucking anything and are just fucking stumbling around and are just fucking completely inept.
Yeah, fuck the police, by the way. Yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't I wouldn't say I hated it, but I didn't like it.
Okay. All right. That's a fair and respectable opinion. What about you, Stu? This was your first time watching. You picked this movie.
I did.
What did you think?
All my PCP Horrorfest picks were movies I haven't seen, and this was I enjoyed this one overall. Vern had warned me going in. I had uneasy expectations about like some of the things that were going to be depicted, and it was definitely some uncomfortable moments like watching this movie. But however, I thought the whole lo-fi approach really lent itself to the horror aspect and what they were trying to convey in this film. And I felt like every time I was about to fall asleep on it, it would surprise me with a great moment. Like there were so many times like that where I was like almost about ready to pause it or to fast forward or see, I was kind of losing interest, and it would bring me right back in. So this movie surprised me in a lot of pleasant ways. A lot of uncomfortable things, but watching here in 2024, like being my first time watching it, I know like a lot of those things are, kind of past me as far as like, we're numb to so many things these days, but I still felt like it was really effective in a lot of moments, and it really impacted me. And I feel like the way like the filmmakers and the writers of this film wanted to do. So I had a lot of respect for, what they were trying to do way back in 1972. And I think it was saying, we'll get into it, but a lot of bigger things about, where we were at as a society and culturally and et cetera, et cetera. But it was very enjoyable for a first time watch, even though I was super skeptical and nervous going in and didn't know what to expect. I really enjoyed this one.
It's crazy to think that this is like Wes Craven's first film. Right? And he says, like, I didn't know anything about directing a film. We knew nothing. We hoped that they asked for $50,000 from their investors because they thought they could make the movie with 40 and pocket 10. That was their kind of goal, right? They got $90,000 to make this movie. It made $2.273 million at the box office. And
that's nuts.
That's a
pretty big deal. And it spurred so much controversy. It was a long time. It was 5 years until Wes Craven did another like legitimate film, adult film, right?
So it did those type of numbers like on triple billings and things like that. Like that's super. That's even more crazy.
You know, we give a lot of love and respect here, and the horror community in general gives a lot of love and respect to movies like Black Christmas and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween for really kickstarting the slasher thing. And then we even beyond that with movies like Henry or movies like Fade to Black, you start getting into, you know, the perspective of the killer. This movie kind of does that for me, right? Where one of my favorite things about this film is the balance between, and I think we'll key into this later on with the music, right? But there are moments of this movie that are fun, right? Where you are almost like not on the side of the bad guys, but you're like, they feel like real people, like interesting people. Like you kind of like their banter, kind of like their performances. And we'll get into that in a minute. But Verno, Last House on the Left. What'd you think, brother?
First of all, you just make me think, because that's something I was thinking yesterday is, and I know you don't like this movie that much. I don't think you hate it, but Devil's Rejects. I know everybody shits on Rob Zombie, and I understand that, but like that's kind of what he was doing in Devil's Rejects was Last House on the Left. I never really recognized that before. You've got a group of people that are just doing crazy shit just to do crazy shit, and you are kind of on their side, and they are somewhat likable. That was the big thing that really struck me, and obviously we'll get into the characters. But as soon as like we got introduced to the Krug gang, I was like, oh shit, I forgot like how interesting most of these people are. And honestly, dude, like I was telling Stu, like it fucking movie kind of sucks. Like be warned. And I texted you last night at like 1 a.m. I'm like, man, it's not as bad as I remembered it. Like I watched this before I started a horror YouTube channel and really went full horror. And it's like, I don't know.
Before you've seen Pieces.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly. and Necromantic. But
I love Pieces. That's a great one.
Oh, Pieces.
Y'all are selling this. Y'all are selling both these movies for me. I've got to see
Pieces was almost on the lineup this year, man. It got removed, man, but it was almost on the lineup.
Pieces the shit. But
I gotta be here when you do that one.
Brooks is gonna hate that one. I cannot wait to hear his opinion on that one.
It's such a good point about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like, oh yeah, like that. I agree. I don't think this probably would have happened. Just the independent filmmaker making this super grungy, nasty. You can feel the stink on the people, the smell, the stink on the people, kind of a movie. Yeah. But the other thing is, I remember this movie being like really amateur, and it is to a degree, but not nearly as amateur as I thought before. Like it's dated, and you can tell it's really, really raw, but you can also like see that there's a talented filmmaker making the film in a lot of ways. And I remember thinking the first time I saw like this Wes Craven being incredibly immature, and I think he was maybe being a little bit immature, but I think part of it was me not getting like what he was doing was probably more the case the first time I saw it. So I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed it. But last thing I'll say is how much I'll echo you perfectly, Stu. Like every time I would start to be like, oh, it's meandering and it's not like it's getting a little slow right here. They would hit you with a big, memorable, iconic moment. And you'd be like, oh, okay. Like it wasn't perfect as far as the pacing goes, but it was, I'm right there with you as far as that goes.
Like also, when Junior starts doing his frog impression, right?
Yeah, like, that's the best part of the movie. That's my favorite part. There's no meandering when man rabbit. And the last thing is Steve Miner, who directs Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3, also worked on this movie, which are
also Halloween H2O.
Yes, yeah. So
Halloween water.
Brilliant delivery.
That was great.
It only could have made it better if you would have quacked. Then I would have been like, fucking
or riveted.
Ribbit.
I just be chilling on my lolly pad all day. Lolly pad? I think it's a lily pad, Robbie. All right, Joe.
It is a lily pad.
What about this movie, man? What do you think overall?
I mean, I love this movie. Like, written and directed by Wes Craven, like his debut. And like having a debut like that and being like, what if I just fucking went for it? Like, imagine that. Writing and directorial debut, my future hinges on this. What if I didn't give a fuck? Is kind of crazy. Like, I mean, that is, I know very, like, we've seen other movies before. We know other creative types. Do they have, like, the brass balls of this guy? No. Almost none of them. Almost none of them. You know, and especially someone who then went on to do the things he did. You know, you wouldn't have with Wes Craven. It's really difficult to say. It's like, yeah, sure, maybe we would have had Texas Chainsaw Massacre, some of these other things, but like, maybe not. Like, it really took someone being willing to get blackballed for a few years, taking all the heat, and coming out on the other end, prove like he was able to do a movie like this, have it successful enough, take the heat for it to allow other movies like this to come out. And then Wes Craven, you know, he comes back and does it again with New Nightmare and sets up Scream. You know, he sets himself up to be like, oh, this kind of works. What if we do this? Like, there are very, like, Wes Craven in a lot of ways is the, you could go maybe the Gil Kane of horror. You know,
Okay.
like that's a dude who set up, he kind of started the Silver Age with Green Lantern, and then he started the Bronze Age with the death of Gwen Stacy. It's like that. Like this dude was like, oh, horror needs a revamp a couple of decades after I started revamping it, so I guess I'll come back and do it again.
Yeah.
So,
and in the midst
I
of that,
mean,
creates Freddy Krueger, right? Like,
Yeah.
off of an idea. By the way, the Nightmare on Elm Street morphed from an idea of a sequel to this movie,
yeah,
where Krug
like,
comes
it's-
back from hell, right? Like,
Well, that's
ridiculous.
wild.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
no, I mean it's great stuff. It's yeah, it's hard to watch. Grow the fuck up. You know, like I mean, you know, we've all had some pretty horrible stuff in our lives. I know some people and have worked with some people who have gone through stuff that's not unlike this. Like it happens. That's
Mhm.
life. Yeah. It happens so often, like not this exact beat for beat thing, but like that kind of loss, coincidences that blow your mind, stuff like that happen. So yeah, why not approach it in a safer sort of space of a movie, you know, like and it's just it's wild seeing a lot of it because like again like a lot of this stuff it's like you would see in things like comic books but it was hard to see in like TV and movies, you know, like I mean we've all wanted to yell at our son until he blows his fucking brains out. I mean we've all been there.
Jesus.
So like, you know, and like we get
But to
to watch
actually
it
do
from the
it.
comfort of our own home where no one's hurt. So, you know, that's
Well, one of the themes Wes
beautiful
Craven
thing.
likes to do in a lot of his films is exploring the darkness within. It's better to
Mhm.
explore it through our fiction than allow it to fester and manifest in reality, right? That is definitely a part.
Absolutely.
All right, I agree with a lot of y'all. I mean, I think the movie's great. I do. I think it's very bold. I think it's very influential. I think it's more impactful than people realize, especially today. It's not as transgressive or hard to watch as some other movies out there, right? There are people that push the boundaries, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
just to do it. But I think Wes was actually doing something a little bit smarter here. This movie, by the way, was originally intended to be a hardcore porno film, where they were going to show everything in detail. And then they were like, you know what? Maybe we don't. And Wes made a conscious decision to focus away from the sex and onto the violence. And this movie still was touted as going too far. But it is anchored by a great cast, I think. I think that, I mean, most of these people that are in this film are either musicians or from adult film, right? And I think they acted their hearts out. They really nailed these roles. And you know, lately I've been nice, but I'm going to go first here because I really want to focus on David Hess as Krug. That is the most scary, sleazy, fucking vile character I have ever seen in a movie. Like Freddy Krueger is a comedic version of this character, right? Michael Myers, Jason, they're faceless, they're wordless, who gives a shit, right? This is seriously a dude who, after this movie came out, he couldn't walk the streets of New York without people being like, fuck you, man. You know, like, in like being real, like walking away from him and shit, because he just fucking took over the role. Now, Marty, what's his name? The guy that played Kreese, Marty Cove? What's his name? Anyway, the dude who played Kreese in Karate Kid, who plays the doofy deputy in this movie,
Martin Cove.
approached Martin Cove. There you go.
Yeah.
They approached him to play Krug, and he goes, "No, I want to play comedy, so let me be the deputy, but I got your Krug, and he can do your music as well." That same dude did the music in this film, just so you know, right? If you didn't know, now you know. But I love him in this film. It is a very visceral performance, and even in, and here's the thing too, this movie does have rape and murder. It never glorifies it, right? And we've seen shit that does, that like uses it in a titillizing kind of way or something like that. This movie doesn't do that. It's all fucking vile, including when he like moves his head off of her and it's like slobber and shit, dude. The trail of slobber. This dude is nasty, and he like portrays that so perfectly well. I love his performance. What about you, Jelani? What's the performance that stands out?
I want to take, I guess, I'm going to take Weasel, the second in command guy with the knife.
Yeah.
And he's just, I thought he was pretty sleazy too.
Mm-hmm.
He's just one of those dudes where you just like, if you met him like in person, like you want to get away from him. Like we need to like, I don't know. I need to move away from you like immediately. He has that presence about him. He's the first thing I really see before Krug, of course. And he's just so, I don't know what it is, but I love his comeuppance. That I don't know. The way he dies is just special.
Spoilers, he gets his dick bitten off.
Pretty much his dick bitten off. It's one of those roles where I'm like, yeah, you deserve this. Like you're one of these people that really, really fucking deserve this.
Dude, and she really fucking does it, right? So if you're not familiar with the movie, it's a revenge film too, because this group, this gang, this like Bonnie and Clyde type group, right, murdered this woman and her friend right in the backyard, basically, of the girl. Right? Her parent, they wind up having to stay at her parents' house. They find out, like I said, it's based on the Virgin Spring. But she is so committed, she waits till he's about to hit climax until she fucking does it, dude. That's like cold as fuck, dude.
So ridiculous.
I wouldn't have got that far. Well, I wouldn't have done it to begin with, but it wouldn't have got that far to begin with. I would just been like, knife, where's your dick? Knife, we're done. But yeah, he's stupid anyway. He walking out in the woods, getting his hands tied up. By the way, fellas, never get yourself tied or handcuffed for any reason.
Well, she says, no man could do that. No. There's no man, no way.
Yeah. And you're right.
Yeah.
I feel like no.
This poor little fella. I gotta help the poor little fella out.
Oh my gosh, he's being so fucking like, yeah, it's great, dude. And that's the moment at the audience where we're like, fucking do it. Like, bite his fucking dick off.
You want to see him die. You want to see him get fucked up. And you want to see them all get ruined.
We found out what the sex crime of the century was.
Yep.
And your dick bit off right before you ejaculate.
He's like, yeah, that's teeth.
Unless you watch Necromantic, and then it goes even crazier than that.
Yeah,
So.
God dang Necromantic! Is this a trailer for Necromantic?
Apparently, I mean, people need to. I don't know if you should watch it, but you should watch our stream about it.
Hey.
All right, fair enough. We'll watch it. But yeah, pretty gnarly dude. Pretty gnarly death. And
the interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead. The interesting thing about that dude is he's like one of the only people involved that really thinks the movie's a piece of shit and really regrets doing it and thinks that he helped lead to the perpetuation of violence against women. And the dude still works, or at the time still worked, and he worked in porn his whole career. So it just seems a little hypocritical to me, man.
Yeah.
I don't think movies, whether they're adult movies or these kind of movies, I don't think they lead to violence. You know,
this wasn't sexy time. This was not sexy
it wasn't
like at all.
Speaking of sexy time, though, Brooks, what about you? What's a performance you want to highlight?
My favorite was like the girl member of the gang. I liked how it's like set up. She's like some kind of like wild animal who just like can just beat the shit out of like I guess her guards or whatever. And like you can she has to be something if she can just hang out with these three fucking like weird creeps and like not have to worry about them. She's like fucking taking a bath in front of them. Like she just doesn't give a shit. I kind of think this. I was kind of hoping that you get to see more of her, like doing wild and crazy shit, but she doesn't really get to as much. It's kind of just more hinted at that she's just a badass crazy who will like flip out and like just beat the shit out of people. But yeah, she's my favorite performance. Like I loved her looks too. Like she had that kind of the devil may care kind of attitude about her.
Oh yeah, Sadie is the character's name.
Yeah, I knew it would start with an S. I can't remember what it was.
That's part of the music is Krug and Sadie Jr. and it's Weasel, Sadie Jr. and Krug, like all that shit, like that goofy like Benny Hill song they play. And if you listen to the lyrics, it's like kind of dark, man. Really, really.
Yeah.
All right, Stu, what about you? What's a performance you want to highlight?
Man, I'm Ada in the chicken truck, bro. For sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The cops ain't getting no free ride. I love it. Everything about that.
That's 11 crates of chickens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like that's a serious blow to my commerce. Y'all can get the fuck on. I love that. Yeah, definitely Ada. I was hoping I would get here and she would still be available. So I'm glad I got the driver.
I told you the dude that played Weasel had a lot of negative things to say about this film, right? On camera and off camera. And also in one of the documentaries, he mentions that he hated that his name wasn't on the poster, but hers was. And so I think this dude's just got some sour grapes over the fact that he didn't really get mentioned as being a really great performer in the film, though he does do a great job of being a sleazoid.
I like him being a sleazeball. Yeah,
right, because he actually is. I don't know. Maybe he felt bad that he wasn't acting. I don't know. What about you, Verno? Speaking of sleazoids,
I was gonna say I can't believe you passed up that opportunity to call me a sleazeball, but you made it right. First of all, I do think he's great, and I love that. It took me a minute to notice. I did notice it the first time watching it, but he's Fred, and then we've got Krug, so we've got like the basis of Freddy Krueger, which was, as you said, Wes Craven's childhood bully. I will go with the kid, Junior. I think he, like in a lot of ways, like first of all, I really like the performance. There's like nuance to the performance, and the character. He kind of goes like character-wise, he's got the most interesting arc, I guess you'd call it. But he's the one that's conflicted. He's the one that kind of breaks down, and you could tell he's a funny dude. Like with the ribbit bit, there's no way that wasn't put in there just because old boy knows how to fucking ribbit. And he does it exceptionally well. So I really enjoyed him. He was kind of by far my favorite character.
He's a great character in the film, man. He really, I think out of everybody, he has some of the most range that is shown in the movie, right? Mm-hmm. And he handles very little very well.
Yeah.
Right. He shows a lot with a little. What about you, Joe? What do you think? What have we left you with? I'm sure you got something.
Well, this is a great ensemble movie that has like a lot of really great people in it. So first, honorable mention to those guys that stole the police car. Like they were the guys who went to go pick them up, and then they were like, they told them off. Like that was fantastic. So props to them. What a great time. And the dad is great. Yeah. He's so hopeful. He's, and they do such a great job in this movie of you seeing these horrible things. And then like more than once, sort of like cutting to the parents. And he's the optimistic one. He's the one who keeps going, oh, don't worry. They're fine. Let her have fun. Do this. And then in turn, he's also the one who is
the most brutal,
like the most forward with the violence. Like the mother, obviously horrific, those bits she does, but he's so outwardly aggressive. He's planning, he's plotting, he's turning the house into the house from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, basically. and then using a chainsaw to kill. Like it's really hard to say that this had no influence on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like I really have a hard time buying that movie comes out if this doesn't. Like, you know, but he's so good, and you get to see him do exactly what you want him to do. And the movie does a great job at making you think, like, I don't know if he's going to pull it off or not. It's that like last like bit, those like last like 20 minutes where, you know, it's like they get to the house, all that, the tension builds, they figure it out. It's phenomenal. And he's such a big part of why it is.
Absolutely, man. 100%. Style and structure. I love the style of the movie, which is cheap, which is documentarian, right? Wes Craven was intentionally trying to mimic some of the footage that we were getting in the American news media from Vietnam, right? And one of the things they say about Vietnam is that this is the first war footage that was pumped into people's houses every night at like 6 p.m. You know what I'm saying? Like, in World War II and World War I and other wars, like it's easy to be like, yes, you know, victory for the good guys. But then when you actually see it and you see that death, you see the ramifications of violence and the brutal nature of it. That's what he wanted to show. So I think it's directed very well, especially for his first film, for a dude who didn't know what he was doing. Like he knew how to frame, you know, some pornographic scenes without getting too much of the dude's asshole, right? Maybe, but like, he was able to actually make this movie and with a certain style that works for it, right? And I think it's got a nice structure, man. I love how it starts off cheesy and hopeful and hippy dippy and all that kind of shit. Then we cut to the bad guys. We kind of like the bad guys. We're kind of like having a romp with them for a minute. And then when the movie really needs to turn, and it does turn, like when with the killings, right? That's a long sequence that like hits hard and changes the tone of the movie. This is one of those movies. It's what like Eli Roth did with the first Hostel. He wants to bring you in with a little bit of humor, a little bit of sexiness, and then just be like, oh, you thought you were here for a good time? Drop it, right? Now, I'm not comparing Hostel to Last House on the Left, but it's the same type of trickery. And then he does it again. He spins it around again where we're like, how horrific the acts that the parents do. Mm-hmm. But we as the audience feel they're justified. But at the same time, we've almost kind of started liking these people, but at the same time have become disgusted with these people. And one of my favorite moments in the movie is after the rape of the main girl who lives like right there, right? The entire group feels like they're disgusted with themselves.
It's like my favorite part of the movie.
It's a great part, and they really carry it with just facial features and the music, honestly, and just the way it's shot. And I think the style and structure in this movie is superb. What about you, Jelani? What are you thinking?
I think it's a little uneven, to be honest. It does like I see where they were trying to do levity with the comedy with the two bumbling cops. I mean, they're doing goofy stuff, but then like serious shit is happening while these goofy ass, dumbass cops are like trying to get to the scene or trying to get to their house. And it's weird to me that you put a mix of those two together. Like I know you need levity, but I think it was just too goofy, and it just throws me off from time to time. But I think it's shot. It feels like it's shot by a 10-year-old who went to film school.
Yeah, that's great.
That's exactly what I see out of it. It's got a B movie. It's got it's pulp. It's gritty. At the same time, like that hoe shakes. It shakes all over the place. It does certain stuff. There are weird camera turns in it for me. There's certain things that I'm just like, I'm too confused at what's happening. And I think some shots are too close, and then other shots aren't farther away enough for us to see what's going on. I get it, and it feels like a porno director made it too, because it has like porno elements. Like, I don't know, really close up shots of Weasel playing with the knife at the beginning. It feels like it's the start of a porno movie in those sections. Like they're supposed to like attack, say, like get at Sadie, and she's like, "I'm tired of you guys coming at me, all the time, So like it's a normal occurrence for her. So there's certain things like that. Ada is great. I will say that she's just. I hate that she feels like a black stereotype because she's got a freaking truck full of chickens, and she has no teeth, and she's just the happiest person in this movie. But even then, that scene is kind of goofy and funny, and the fact she pokes those cops, there's
a lot of humor interjected in this film.
It is, and it's like it's unsettling for what the subject matter is and what is going on. It's jarring to have like this horrible, horrible scene happen, and then these two cops are trying to get on top of a chicken truck. So it's just it's weird in parts, and I just think that part to me is a little disjointed.
I think it also though it's trying to set you up. Most movies at this time, like as the audience, I think they thought, "Oh shit, the cops now realize it's serious. They're on their way. They're going to go save the day." And man, what a moment that must have felt like in 1972 watching this, like in a drive-in or something, right? Like, I mean, obviously we can't be there, but like we're smart enough to put ourselves there, right? Imagine the first time you see that shit. Like this is a very different movie than there are movies that were made before this, but I don't think as many people had seen them at the time. What about you, Brooks? What do you think about style and structure?
Well, it's pretty simplistic, but I think it works for, the kind of movie it is. Like it does very much seem like somebody's first movie in a lot of ways, but I think it does work. Like there are scenes that I really thought were like really well thought out, like the sequence where the main girl, like she goes out into the middle of the pond or whatever, and then dude just starts shooting at her. I thought that was like that was a good scene. Like I like the way it was set up, but it does clash with itself. But it's kind of, I don't know. I'm like of two minds about it because it's very jarring and it's like it throws me off. But at the same time, I kind of appreciate how kind of clever it is with this idea of these like two cops who could have like prevented this whole thing, but just because they're too stupid and incompetent, like it just keeps cutting back and showing them how, and like it keeps reminding you, yeah, these guys are dumb and they're fuck ups and they're not going to be your heroes, But it's like I kind of like it and I kind of don't at the same time, This movie kind of does that to me, It kind of gives me this internal struggle where like I kind of want to like it, but like I just can never get around to it.
I think that's what Wes Craven wanted you to feel, because like in the interviews in one of the documentaries, he says, "Oh, I'll never watch this film again, but I do think it's important that it's out there." Right? Like almost like that kind of thing. And yeah, the cops, that sheriff's such a dipshit. When they're first reporting, the parents are reporting that the girl is missing. He's eating her fucking birthday cake.
Yeah.
Like the first piece of the birthday cake goes to the dipshit sheriff who's just like, she's just probably went away smoking some pot or some shit like that. Whatever. Speaking of running away to smoke some pot, Stu, what about you? What do you think about style and structure?
Always A+ with the transitions, brother. Yeah. I love the style. I love the lo-fi shooting of this. I thought it lent itself so well to so many things that, like I said earlier, that they were trying to get across and really make you feel in this movie. And I thought that really those were the most effective moments of I love how they dealt with trauma. Like after horrific things would be happening, they'd all just be standing around, one be throwing up. It all felt so very real. And like how these characters were really in shock and trying to process what was going on. I just thought that was just so well done, and that really lent itself to the authenticity of the film. Structure wise, I kind of agree with Jelani. I thought it was a little bit abrupt sometimes. Like some of the switches between scenes would leave me, wanting more or a little bit disgruntled, but at the same time, it wasn't enough to throw me off. I thought the style over kind of overwhelmed the structure and really came through and was the shining star of the film. But I thought the structure and the way they set up the storyline could have been a little bit, but well, I thought we could have really felt the parents' revenge in the end a little bit better than just them.
That's
just
true.
the whole way they kind of set it up with like it's happenstance and they're figuring it out and running it out and finding the daughter's body and stuff like that. But regardless, I felt like the style was really like why this movie endures, man. I felt like it felt like so many of these scenes felt very far removed from what it would feel like in a real life situation. So for that was that was the torchbearer for me for this film. Absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of far from reality, what about you, Verna? What do you think?
I don't even know where I'm at right now, bro. Dude, I mean, well, I can't hear myself. There we go. Structure wise, I like what you said, Robbie. You're like right off the bat, you kind of meet these two very different families. So like I like the introduction of those two. As far as like, and then where it goes from that, you just get real simple, like easy to look at sections. You get the rapey sections, you get the ending. But just to comment on the jarring bit, the first time I watched the movie, I was like, this is the stupidest shit ever with the cops. I hated it. I was like, what is he trying to do? For whatever reason, it did not bother me nearly as much this time. I feel like it was kind of a comment. I'm like, oh, you came here for entertainment. Like you just watched that. Like, are you not entertained? Oh, you wanted something more like this. So it was kind of more like satirical or what meta you would say, which was a Wes Craven thing. The other thing, like there's weird edits that I never know how to put my finger on that you see in low budget movies. That because I started Hills Have Eyes right before we got rolling here. I'd watched it for a bit. And it's there too, and I never could put my finger on like what is it? What didn't they know what to do? Like when it cut, like people will be having a conversation and it'll cut to the next person, and there's something about it that is so awkward. You guys like know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that is shooting
absolutely.
with one camera.
Okay, it's just it just jumps out to me. It's like, oh yeah, that's what low budget shitty movies look like.
Scene, and it looks over like you're right here, and then you're talking to the other person, and it's cut over this way. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but it's something like that.
Yeah, the other bit, like just like obviously the style is how fucking gross it is and how it makes you feel. Like the documentary, like it doesn't look as impressive as his other films after this. Even Hills Have Eyes. He's like really one of his biggest skills as a filmmaker is his use of space. Like think about the opening scene in Scream, and you can lay out the front yard, the backyard, the side yard, that whole house. And like I was really paying attention to this.
All the windows and shit, Yeah.
You kind of do get a feel of the main house that you're in, but you could just tell like where he hasn't got there yet. But the other thing I wanted to mention is like he says part of the reason you've kind of touched on this, Robbie, is like why he wanted to make the movie the way that he did is because all these movies were glorifying violence, and he wanted something that didn't, obviously. And like it got me thinking, and we're doing all these Wes Craven movies in a row here. Is like I wonder, I'm going to question as we go through them and talk about Hills Have Eyes and later Scream, like does he eventually glorify violence? You know what I mean? Like Tina flying around the room and Johnny Depp's bed and the blood, and I don't know, like is that glorification of violence? It's sure as shit entertaining, and it's the opposite of this. It's completely fantastical and not real. So it's just kind of interesting where he started and then where he goes from here, like style wise, the way that he treats violence in the movies.
Yeah, that's an interesting exploration, and I think the one thing that he cares about the most in his films are the ramifications of violence, right? And I'm sure we'll get into that. Speaking of ramifications of violence, what about you, Corallo? What do you think about the style and stuff?
So I probably don't have too much to add on the style. I think everyone kind of touched on it. Yeah, I like it. It's good. With the structure, I love the structure. I think it's great. I think there's no fat in this movie. It's 85 minutes. It's real quick and breezy. Setup. You have the tense situations. They kill them. They're at the house. They get killed. There's interstitials with the cops. Done. I think it works great. Not only do I have no problem at all with the juxtaposition, I think it elevates the movie. I think it makes it stand out. I think it's part of what it's part of why we're talking about this now. And I'm not sure if we would be if there, you know, if it wasn't that case. And also, that's life. I mean, you know, you have a heart attack while like Seinfeld's on. It's not like, I don't think it's very appropriate for you to be dropping dead while there's a comedy on your television. You know, it's life. That's literally how things work. You laugh and having a good time. Someone drops dead. That shit happens every day. That's
for some
life.
reason, you remind me of that bit in The Departed where I think maybe it's Jack Nicholson, maybe somebody else, but he's like, he fell funny.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Such a great line.
Yeah, but I mean,
And it's
like,
what the
I
Coen
think
brothers
it
do
was-
so well in some of their darker films,
Yeah.
like Miller's Crossing and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. What does
Yeah,
he say to
no,
Nicholson after that?
absolutely.
He's like, "You're a sick fucker." You know that?
Like, I think this was at Heroes Con. But there was, I'm trying to think, I think it was there, but like there was an accident on the road, not too far from the, like, I had nothing to do with Heroes Con. It was just hanging out in Charlotte. And it was like in front of a bar that was blasting Baby Got Back.
Nice.
So there's like people running out of their cars, being, oh, it's going, police are coming. Like no one seemed to get seriously hurt, but it's blasting Baby Got Back. That's just life. It's what happens. And I feel like it's weird to be like, I need my sad thing with the sad, or else I can't buy it sad. It's
Damn
like, come on.
Get you, Joe.
I feel him. I agree with him. I agree with Joe.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. All right. The music. The music in the film is done by David Hess. David Hess, who plays Krug in the film. Marty Cove brought him in. They wanted somebody big. So apparently he put him in like 5 or 6 like giant sweaters. He came in there sweating, looking like he was buff, and came in there with an attitude and got the role, and then figured out, they figured out that he did music. He actually wrote the song All Shook Up, which became a big hit for Elvis. I'm all shook up.
Right.
And if you look at his career, he did a lot of songs for Elvis. He did a lot of songs for other people. This dude knew what he was doing.
That's crazy.
He did the music in the film, and I love the fucking music. From that opening theme, and the road leads to nowhere. I'm not gonna have to do it again, right? But even the Weasel and Sadie, Junior and Krug, like, there's something about it. There's like, and there are moments where it's tonal and king, 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 king. There are moments of like tones and scary things and things like that. And with that bit when the stabs happen and you hear like a whang, like something like that is in there.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the music doesn't feel like it fits with the film. I think that's intentional. I think that's on purpose. For instance, that like Sadie and Krug song or whatever, right? It's very happy, it's buoyant, but like if you listen to the lyrics, no, it's like, let's go have fun with these children and we'll kill them when we're done. Like, though, that's in the lyrics. And I love that juxtaposition. I think the music is telling us this movie is putting things in juxtaposition as well, right? We're doing the profane and the sacred all at once, in a way. Not quite as some others do, maybe, Verno, you know what I'm saying? But like, that is intentional, I think, in this film. I think it comes through in the music. I fucking love the music. This is a soundtrack I can listen to. I can just put it on and listen to it. And it's reflective of the time. It's reflective of the movie. And I think it's damned important to this movie. What about you, Jelani? What do you think?
It still throws me off. It's weird because like they're kidnapping a girl, or they're kidnapping the girl and throw them in the trunk. And it's just this happy-go-lucky music, which I get now that you've explained it. I kind of understand where that would have come from.
I get what you're saying, though. There's a kazoo
But
in that
it's like,
bit, man.
what
You know
is
what I'm saying?
crap?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, what are you doing? This is not the music that you should be hearing while this is happening.
But the music is their perspective.
But yeah, it is.
This is
Like,
their romp. This is them. I just got out of jail. Like, we're having fun. This is what we do, right?
Yeah. And it's so weird to see. And you watch it and you're like, this doesn't go here. These don't belong. And it feels weird to me. I'm sorry. Sorry, Joe. Still jarring. still bothers me that is like one thing and then the other, and especially the chicken music. Oh my god, their whole section with Ada and the chick. I'm sorry, that still gets me, man. It's just like. This is
You tell me you don't like the blatant disrespect for the cops in this film. I know you like it.
No, I love when the cops get disrespected. Fuck them stupid ass cops. And Creed turned out to be a cop. Oh yeah, fuck that shit. Technically, they're sheriffs. Now sheriffs are I give them a pass for certain stuff because they're not really, they're not full blown asshole cops. They're like, yuck, you got to put you in jail.
They're the dudes out there eating Twinkies being like, somebody just murdered somebody? Fuck,
yeah.
This ain't happening.
What's going on? Yeah, they're not the right people to do it. It's just those asshole cops that really just bother. Like, they pull you over for no reason, guys. Or shoot you, for fun. They aren't those cops. They're just goofy-ass, dim-witted, bumble-headed,
Wait, it doesn't this like I don't know, like you think about this movie and then think about Dewey, right? Like there's something about bumbling idiot sheriff guys, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm gonna be keeping an eye out for bumbling cops in his other movies.
Dewey is bumbling, but Dewey is useful. And what they do to him in Scream that last Scream was just bullshit. But anyway,
not the last one, but
not the last one. This is 5. Yeah, I haven't watched 6. I don't give a shit.
6 is good.
Why you kill Dewey? Man, anyway.
But the music. You thought it was a jarring experience.
It's jarring. It's weird. It does certain stuff that I didn't like. Okay, all right, I didn't like it. It's the only part of the movie I just.
Why are you so defensive, man? It's okay.
It's just I don't know, man. It's just I like this movie. You don't understand. I enjoy this movie. It's just the music that just what the fuck? It's all over the place to me. Like it's scary when it needs to be in certain parts, but then other parts it's just really happy and jovial when it doesn't need to be. And it's just I don't know. I can't place it. It just it's too much for my tiny fragile mind to understand. All right.
Yeah.
I
get it. Speaking of too much for our tiny fragile minds to understand, Brooks, what do you think about the music in the film?
I actually like the music in this movie. It's how I knew that the movie was taking a piss, kind of. It's like, when you get these giant transitions and then you get the music too, you're like, oh, okay, I can see what he's kind of trying to do with this. But yeah, I liked it actually. Like, I think it reminds me of like there's a theme song to this show called Kolchak the Night Stalker. And it's like the weirdest theme song I ever heard because it starts off with this like, jaunty whistling tune. And then it goes into this kind of like almost like sitcom-y music. And then it goes into like almost a soap opera-y dramatic thing. And then it just all of a sudden becomes like the suspenseful thing at the end. That's what this movie kind of feels like that. It's kind of like fucking with tones with the music.
Yeah. Ebbs and flows of tone. Yeah.
Speaking of fucking around with the ebbs and flows of life, what about you, Stu? What do you think about the music in the film?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Like I liked that. I think I enjoyed it more after learning that it was, has his own personal written soundtrack for it. But watching this film and learning that these songs are, catching on to certain phrases or words or characters in these songs and realizing it's specifically written for this film made me really appreciate it. So I dug it, man, and it's definitely of the time. It felt right on time as far as the topical tunes are concerned. So yeah, I loved it.
What about you, Verno? What are you sitting on?
First of all, I never noticed the first time watching it that the lyrics were about the movie. And this time I'm sitting like, oh, I don't know. I just thought that was so funny. And I really do like that song in particularly. It does have like a really cool flow to it. And the one that they open with, like I'm kind of a sucker for 70s music in general. And these are like shitty Simon and Garfunkel-y, maybe not Simon and Garfunkel, but like singer-songwriter songs of the era, like John Denver type shit. Like
the Mama and the Papas, shit like that.
I can dig that stuff. And just on the juxtaposition, like I noticed this time watching it because I had headphones on, is like a lot of times like it goes from really, really subtle to really in your face. Like all like the horror-y sounding music, like the normal fucking horror music that you would hear in a movie, is really, really subtle and really, really quiet. And then the silly shit is really loud and in your face, which is interesting. And I agree with what everyone's saying. It's clearly done intentionally to be jarring, and that's why it will throw you off for sure. But it's also something to, like, it is entertaining because you're like, what the fuck are they doing? It's kind of like fun to just, witness.
Hell yeah. Dux, what do you think?
Well, I think it's something I really enjoy. Clearly, I was more or less defending that previously with the structure before, but it's just genuinely a really good soundtrack. I love what they're sort of doing. I think it works really well with this it helps make the movie fit together in a lot of ways, because as far as the cops know, they're not stopping a mass murder. They're like, all right, we gotta get in town. She's probably, drunk or whatever, and we just gotta get her home. So like that's like the mindset of the parents, the cops. It's really not until the parents figure out what happened, and by then the tone of the soundtrack does shift a little bit. There isn't as much of that like blah 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 blah. Like I think this soundtrack and what they're trying to do is more intentional than it's being given credit for. I think it was really doing something genuine and unique that doesn't get talked about enough. And there's a reason why people like Quentin Tarantino were so inspired, not just by the content of the movie, but by the soundtrack specifically, to the point of including one of the songs in the Hateful Eight soundtrack. So I think there's a lot more to this soundtrack than I think even fans of the movie give it credit for, and is probably one of the highlights and one of the things too that really stand out as like a reason why we're still talking about this movie over 50 years later.
Absolutely. This movie's got some themes. We've already touched on a little bit of it tonight, but let's dive in. Jelani, what's this movie speaking to you?
I think it's the loss of innocence. Playful, joyful times. It's the movie starts off with, a girl going to a concert, and she's going with her friend and her family. She has a loving family, and they give her a gift, and she goes out on the town with her friend, and all they want to do is score some grass. And they meet this guy, and at first he's like, "Nah, I don't have any." And they're like, "Wait a minute, I do," because his crazy ass other family needed some chicks to play around with other than Sadie. So this happened, it turns into this domino effect of where things are just taken away. And at the point the family believes that she's out having fun and partying and whatnot, planning a surprise birthday party, doing the things that they normally would do, for their daughter. And slowly finding out that the people that they've taken in after she's been missing for a while happen to be the ones that have murdered her and their friend, and what their loss of innocence and their hopefulness, their joy was taken away, and they immediately switch to these other people that are just basically revenge. They're after revenge. They're after blood. They're lusting after the destruction of these three people. And it seems like it's too common. And as you say, like Joe says, it's life. It's what happens when people decide to do what they decide to do. When psychopaths are let free. What happens when they encounter actual people. And it actually goes back to the Killing Joke. How one bad day can change your life. You get the Joker's origin story, basically. And how he was trying to do that with Commissioner Gordon by ruining or shooting Barbara and doing unspeakable things with her, taking photographs to break Commissioner Gordon and make that one day. And some people take it one way, another people take it a completely different way, and that's where these parents went. But I still think it's a loss of innocence. It's a loss of just happiness being taken away. And what happens when you have that one bad day? What happens? That's how I got it.
I like that. What about you, Brooks? What are you thinking?
Well, I think the main message this movie's trying to get out is that nowhere is safe. We live like the way we live. Our society, our civilization. It's meant to make us feel safe. Like things like this couldn't happen to us. But the truth is, those things can happen. They may not be like an everyday occurrence, but they can happen. Like these kinds of bad things, and it's the idea of these people. They're obviously pretty well off. They live like far out here in some woods. They're like they're kind of secluded, but they feel safe because they're part of American society, and bad things don't happen to people like them generally. But the bad things do happen. We obviously know. It's just a matter of chance, pretty much. It's all just a coin flip. And it's kind of like you're talking about Vietnam. Like that's the idea. As America as a nation too, kind of has like this idea. We have this idea like nothing could ever touch us. Like we'll never have to face any repercussions for any of the things that have happened in the name of our country. And that's not true. Like I don't think I think eventually that could very well be the case, but it's just an idea. You just got to keep in mind you're never really truly safe. Not that you need to be paranoid, but always to keep in the back of your mind that like any moment things can make a turn for the worse. So you just got to keep that in mind.
Well, that's I think a rather profound thing you just said there, where like in America we feel like we're a country that can't be invaded, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not really happened to America in our history, right? But it does happen in small scale, right? Like this is actually not just a early slasher, it's an early home invasion movie too, man. Right? So that's an element that's there too. Like nowhere is safe. And sometimes these heinous things happen in your backyard, sometimes even in your own house. Speaking of having heinous things happen in your own house, I've heard about some heinous things that happen in your bathrooms too.
Once again,
when you get them damn enchiladas in you. Anyway, Stu, what do you think? What's this movie saying to you?
Yeah. To me, it's about. I think it harkens back to the death of the 60s in the era of peace and love. This movie came out in 1972. You look at MLK getting shot in 1969, Altamont, all those things that happened in the summer of 1969, going into 1970. I think, and it all, to me, I always think about that conversation they had with their daughter at the beginning of the movie. She's going to the concert. What's the name of the band? Oh, it's Bloodlust. And they're giving her this peace medallion, this necklace. And that necklace is really like the centerpiece of the movie because it's, what her mother sees on the kid later on in the toilet and, what kind of spurns their revenge. So to me, it's all about like, the death of, what did Hunter S. Thompson had that great quote, like you can look west from Las Vegas and see that place where the wave rose and broke back, that era of peace and love in the 60s that we almost got there, but Vietnam and just our own violent nature. And I feel like that's what this movie ended up being. You have violence feeding on violence, like the parents just taking out their own horrific revenge on these killers. Like we really got nowhere. So to me, it was that cyclical nature of American history, with these this family and the tragedy that happened to them.
100%, man.
Yeah.
And not to undercut that very profound statement, but one of my favorite bits I forgot about was when they are having that conversation with her about the band and all that shit. And he's like, I can see your nipples through this. This way. He goes, what's with this tits business? What's with this tits business? Speaking of tits business, Verno, what do you think about the theme of the film?
Waiting for some tits business.
Yeah.
Dude, speaking of shit we forgot to say earlier, I had AI run the numbers for me, and roughly, we're looking at a 1 in 25,000 chance of kidnapping a girl in the city, leaving the city, driving randomly, and ending up at her exact house. So that's the biggest. We didn't mention that in the story, but that is the biggest plot hole in the history of film.
There should have been a detective being like, Sheriff.
Yeah.
Marty Ghost should be like, Sheriff, there's a 1 in 25,000 chance.
At one point, the one guy says, "What are the odds?" And I'm like, "What the fuck are the odds?" Let's see.
I love what they were trying to sneak him out of the building and throw him in the trunk, and they're like in the building, like all these demolished buildings. It's like, who the fuck is watching?
I gotta say though, that does sound a bit low. You know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I thought that too. Hey, that's
no.
conservative. That AI said it was conservative. It was actually
no, but I mean, like that's a like, wow, I have a chance of that like happening like 1,000 times over before I win the lottery. Like that's not
get struck by lightning, right?
Yeah.
Like, before you die in an airplane crash, like
the point is, it's never gonna happen. It's never gonna fucking happen. But anyway, as far as the themes go, the first thing that struck me, like one of the first lines in the movie, is like, "Oh, anything good in the newspaper?" The dad's reading the newspaper. He's like, just murder and mayhem. So like that's how he's getting his entertainment. That's how he's relaxing, is by reading about murder and mayhem, which obviously feeds into what the rest of the movie does. But the other big thing that I always think about for Wes Craven movies is it's like the sins of the father or the sins of the generation before you, like in all of his movies. In this one, it's not like the father, it's Krug. It's Krug being the father of that family and kind of what that leads to. But then in Nightmare on Elm Street, it's the parents in that one, and Scream, it's Sydney's mom. It's like Wes Craven always hits that generational bit. But and then there's also like this whole, I don't even know if I can wrap my mind around it, but like if you look at like what happens with the cops we've got a situation. The cops are completely useless and they can't help you the whole movie. So they have to take the problem into their own hands. And then by doing that, they have to break the law. And then the last thing we see in the movies is the cops at the house taking the chainsaw. So we have to assume that they've now been arrested for murder. At least that's the way I read it.
They're going to jail.
So he's saying something there about like the police and the government and the system and all that. That's pretty interesting and could be looked into. But there's a lot, man.
Yeah, you're right on the money, man. What about you, Joe? What are you thinking?
You know, a lot of stuff obviously has already been brought up, but I think one of the interesting things that this movie does is it really blurs that line and plays with, you know, this idea of sort of fate and coincidence, and like how most movies would do this in a way where it was like either unavoidable, or if it was fate, or it was like someone or some things, like thumb was on the scale. This movie plays it straight. It plays it as like these are complete coincidences. Like, sure, it's tragic, but it never plays it up. It never leans into that. It leans into that idea of like, these things just happen. And it's really sort of telling you this, like, there's like horrible things like that are just a thing that can happen. They don't always happen. They're not going to happen to most people, but they happen. And when you look at it, even bluntly, there's like a fantastical element sort of to what happens, but it's not a grander scheme thing. It's not if the cops would have got there on time, and the way they do it with them, they get there in time to watch the parents like kill off the last of them, and they can't save the murderers, but like, would we have wanted them to? Like, at no point do you really even want the cops to, like, that's not the point. It's just, it plays it strictly as coincidence. And there's funny elements to it, but I mean, if no one was able to save him, and they make it very clear, there are cars driving by when they're like doing these killings, and like, yeah, maybe they could have missed it, but I'm sure a lot of people saw there was something going on and were like, it's none of my business, and like,
Right.
just kept driving. You know, like if they made it to the road, would it have stopped? I don't know, but like the movie doesn't dwell on that. It doesn't dwell on the fate and missed opportunities. It plays it straight. It plays it as a coincidence. It plays as this stuff just happens. It's not trying to tell the audience, oh, if only this or that would have happened, things would have been better. Any other movie that touches on this would lean into that. This movie does not, and it's part of what makes this movie more impactful and feel like it's actually telling you something you haven't heard a million times before.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Y'all all have hit it on the head tonight. But what I was going to initially say was it's about violence begetting violence, the perpetual cycle of violence. I love how Stu said that's a thing about the history of this nation, right? And how that ties into the Vietnam War, right? It is about the loss of innocence. It is Wes Craven kind of making, maybe even if it's subconsciously, some kind of like a take on the loss of innocence that was feeling like we can only know from history at this point. Like us, none of us are like that old, you know what I'm saying? But like we can only know from history, like, but you know what the 30s, 40s, and 50s were like. You know what the 60s were like. Then we know what the 70s and 80s were like and how that led to where we are today. So this movie is one of those very important touchstones where there's somebody in real time making a real comment about the direction of American society, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. Violence begetting violence. The generational thing. You're right, Verno. That's something that Wes Craven loves. I always talk about when any Wes Craven movie, you can always say it's about the darkness inside, right? That we have just as much capability for these heinous acts, provided the motivation as the people that have less motivation, right? So it's about the motivating factors. But when you get to the end, and I love that you mentioned this, Joe, do we want the cops to show up or do we want to see the revenge? What's the difference between watching the good, the bad, and the ugly and wanting the good guy to blast away the bad guy, right? Or to kind of sensationalize the rape and murder that's done in those movies, right? Or do we want, like, but show the real fucking effects, right? So Wes is trying to do that. And so then we now have an investment like these parents that we want to see that revenge, you know? Yeah. This movie makes me think of Day of the Dead a little bit, right? Where Day of the Dead also has a score that you're like, how does this electronic 80s pop synth score fit into this movie? But it does. And also how that whole movie is setting us up to want to watch these people be ripped to shreds. The zombies aren't the enemy, it's us. And that's what this movie's about. It's about the violence that begets the violence. And the generational thing, the sins of the father, right? You have two fathers in this movie. You got Krug, who is a shit to his son. It made him, he caused him to get addicted to heroin so he could control him, right? He urges and screams at him to kill himself in a very, very, that's a super disturbing fucking
that's
moment
insane.
in this movie too.
I forget that.
Oh yeah.
From the first time I watched it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really fucking fucked up. And David Hess does a great job of like really portraying that, man, and just being a nasty dude. This dude's life was ruined, man. I bet he never got laid again after this movie, man.
Oh, yeah, right. He got laid so much.
Yeah, I bet when he goes on to I bet when he's on Tinder, he's like, have you seen Last House on the Left? No? Cool. We can hang out. But also that there's another father who really cares about his kid. Maybe doesn't understand her. Maybe is not, but there's a relationship there, and you can see it in their interaction, in the brief moment in the movie where they interact together, right? You see it in him when he finds her body. Same thing with the mother, but in the father in particular. And then the father does some heinous fucking shit.
Oh, it's a little Home Alone shtick he does.
It's a little Home Alone.
It's a little Nightmare on Elm Street.
That's what Nancy does at the end of Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, some Home Alone shit.
You know what it reminds me of also is Sydney's door in Scream. It's a way different, more subtle thing, but it's a booby trap. It's the same kind of like Wes Craven's
Yeah.
mind working with booby traps in the house.
Yeah, you're right, dude. I bet he talked to
That's a
Christopher
great call,
Columbus and
bro.
John Hughes about Home Alone. But to wrap that up, basically, is motivation is a factor, but the thing is that we all have the potential for this violence, the potential for this monster inside of us, right? And we also have the potential to see or to crave to see vengeance and revenge. And it's heinous what the Krug gang does in this film, right? But it does a great job of also showing us how cruel it is for this dude. Because let's be honest, like by the book of the law, cops show up, turn the chainsaw off, let the dude. No, fuck that dude. You tell me if you find your fucking 17-year-old daughter raped and murdered in your backyard, what the fuck would you do? You know what I'm saying?
I'm biting dicks off.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, exactly. And I'm not saying that it's saying that it's not saying that the motivations are the same, but the outcome is the same, right? And that was one of the things about the Vietnam War. It doesn't matter. We can look at it now and it's way more muddy. And in those days, it was muddy to a lot of the populace, right? But like, what is war? What is violence? All it does is beget more violence. And it's a cyclical nature. And with the sins of the father thing, it doesn't just matter. This is a family that was affected by the sins of another father.
Yeah.
Or mother or whatever it could be, right? It isn't, gender doesn't matter. It's just like generational perpetuation of violence.
Right.
It's a haunting exploration of that.
Well, and like
more
Joe's saying
viscerally so than The Shining, which I think is kind of touching on the same themes.
About it being like lifelike. It's like he does a great job. He is a good father, but it doesn't matter because that doesn't. You're not going to protect your children just from being a great father. You can't be there all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But he did the right thing by not being a tyrannical father and saying you can't go. What's with this tits business?
She'd be alive though, but
She would be alive.
He would be alive, but at the same time,
it's bloodlust.
This is life, and these are the chances.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to fucking contemplate, but Wes Craven's movies are more complex than I think people realize.
Yeah.
Including Last House on the Left. Now it's time to rate the film out of 5 possible you digs. You out there in the chat who have survived making it through this movie review, let us know what you rate this film, The Last House on the Left. I'm going to kick us off. 5 you digs. 5 you digs. This movie does exactly what it sets out to do. It is the first film from Wes Craven. It's not the first film really from Sean Cunningham, but it's also one of his first things. And Wes and Sean, by the way, we talk a lot about Wes, but Sean Cunningham had a lot to do with the result and end of this movie. And you can see the influence of this movie on Friday the 13th, right? A little bit more fun, a little bit more sensationalized. But this movie is very important because it really kickstarted Sean Cunningham and Wes Craven's careers. It was some of the first things they ever did, and I think they nailed it. I think they nailed it so hardcore. I think it changed the face of horror, right? And I think Wes did that again in the 90s with Scream. I also think he did it a little bit in the 80s with Freddy Krueger, right? Well, that's a thing that got away from him, right? But he was giving us a more dynamic take on the 80s slasher, right? So I think that Wes Craven is one of the only filmmakers who broke new ground in 3 decades of horror, right? And if he was alive today, he would probably do it again.
He's the Aerosmith of horror directors. It's crazy.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. Yeah, you're probably right. 70s, 80s, and 90s. Yeah, you're right, bro. He is the Aerosmith
I would have went
directors.
David. I would have went David Bowie.
What did he do in the 90s? Well, I mean, I'll believe you, but I don't remember.
I'm afraid of Americans.
Oh, okay, sure.
I'm afraid of the world. That one alone.
All right.
And
Fair
his
enough.
appearance in Zoolander in the 2000s. Anyway, so
Yeah. It is random. Yeah.
I give it 5 you digs, a perfect score. What about you, Jelani?
It's in the horror lexicon. It's one of these films that it set up so many other things. It's done so well, but I'm gonna give it a 4.5. It's all right for me. Like I said, the music still fucks me up. Sorry, it's weird and
That's fine, man.
triggering for me for the.
Yeah.
The
You gotta admit that theme's great though, right? The road
It is.
leads to
Yeah.
nowhere.
Yeah,
That's good.
that's fine. That's not bad at all.
And
It's
they
just-
repeat it in other bits, like other more comic. Like if you really pay attention, there's more like energetic songs that use those same like themes, man. That like, I mean, I
got
think
you.
it's really brilliant.
I just think
It's not quite Goblin, but it's good.
It's too much.
The only movie I can think of that uses a kazoo. So
Yeah.
But
and
a 4 you digs for or 4 point, what'd you say? 4.5.
4.5.
Hell yeah. All right, Jelani, that's a great score. What about you, Brooks? What are you thinking?
I give this one I give it 2.5. Like I don't like it, but I wouldn't say it sucks either. Like I kind of appreciate what it's trying to do, but like it's just not like there's certain things about like certain horror movies where like if it doesn't like get me, like I don't think this movie didn't really get under my skin like the way it was meant to. It just felt kind of like it felt a little dull to me, but like I did like certain aspects of it. So I wouldn't say that this is a movie I would say like it sucks, it's not worth watching, but at the same time it's just a movie that like I just didn't really enjoy.
I'm always like, fair enough. Your opinion's right. Your opinion's your opinion, your worldview. 2.5? Jesus Christ, dude. All right. I cannot wait to hear. We're doing pieces very soon. We're doing pieces next year, man. You just wait and see.
Please.
They're so different. It's so much more fun.
I feel like
You'll
you
love
just
it.
dared me. No shit. It is very different. We should do Necromantic.
There you go, too.
Jesus Christ.
All right, Stu, what about you? Out of 5 you digs, what do you rate Last House on the Left?
It's a 4 out of 5 for me, man. I thought it was really strong. Like I said, never boring. Had a lot of things to say. I thought conveyed so much with made so much out of a little. You know what I mean? With in terms of this being his first movie and the budget they had, I thought it was incredibly effective, and I thought it said a lot of things, on a bigger scale about society and where we're at as an American culture and where we continue to be. So yeah, 4 out of 5 for me. I thought it was a great first watch, and I see now why it is such a hallmark in the horror genre. So
Hell yeah. All right, that's
Yeah.
respectable. All right, what about you, Verno?
I am right there with my brother Stu, man. I mean, as far as like its importance to horror, like it's a 5. It's one of the most important movies. But as far as like my enjoyment of it, I think it's a solid 4. I enjoyed it. I expected to come into this. If I would you would ask me like, hey, what's your score on Last House on the Left from when I watched it a few years ago? I expected a 2.5 along there with my brother Brooks. So I get that. I totally do get that. But I just kind of appreciate like knowing how important it is and watching it. And it's way more entertaining and watchable than I remembered it being because of the characters, especially because of the characters. The one thing that we didn't mention that I just want to throw in real quick is when Krug tells the girl to piss her pants. Just like, I don't know, like how it all starts. That's the first like really gnarly
Just ruined
thing.
my final thought, man. That was gonna be my final
Hey,
thought.
I just set it up, man. I just set up your final thought. You ruined it by saying I ruined it. God damn it.
Oh shit. But I didn't want anybody to think that I stole it from you. Like I stole it from Wes Craven.
But I'll give it a 4. I'm tempted to go 4.5 because of the importance of it. But for real, my enjoyment of it is a solid 4.
All right, that's respectable too. What about you, Joe? What are you thinking?
I didn't think I was going to give this a 5 when I came in, and I feel like I talked myself into it over the course of the discussion. So I am going to give it a 5. I'm also going to point out one of the other things too that's part of why this movie is crazy and incredible is these guys killed his daughter. They're in his house. The guy doesn't care to the point where he makes his own son kill himself in front of the guy who lost his daughter, who was fighting this hard because he lost his daughter. He put himself in this position to get killed by this guy who at that point thought, I am absolutely going to kill this guy. It's like this subtle way of being like, I don't care about, like, you lost your kid. I don't even care about my kid. I'm going to make my kid die in front of you You're that
Let's
pathetic.
see how much I believe. Yeah.
You know, like that's crazy. Movies don't do that. That's nuts.
Fuck yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. All right. A 5 from me, a 4.5 from Jelani, a 2.5 from Brooks. That means you think that some of the Paranormal Activity movies are better than this, man. That's what that means, man.
That's fair.
All right. A 4 from Stu, a 4 from Verno, and a 5 from Joe. That's the PCP average, and this is a very real number. 4.1, 666, 666, 666, 7. That's the official PCP rating. That's 3 sets of 666. I think that accurately describes it, my friends, 100%. Thus concludes our look at Last House on the Left. Definitely check it out if you've never seen it. I think it is a movie that is worth watching. I really like it. Most of us seem to really like it. I even think Brooks likes it. And I think his opinion will grow a little bit. Maybe. We'll see what happens. But next week, here on PCP Movie Night, we're talking about a Dario Argento movie, Inferno.
Yeah!
I like to say Inferno instead of Inferno.
I'm always weirded out by that.
Like cool. You know,
I thought we did this already.
No, we didn't.
Really?
No, we did it on DHS because we did the Three Mothers trilogy. But this is the follow-up, thematically of sorts, to Suspiria, and it's the follow-up to Suspiria chronologically from Dario Argento.
Yep.
We can't do a horror fest without doing a Dario Argento movie, and we're on slim pickings after this, man. You just wait and see, dude. We've already done Deep Red. We've already done Bird. We've
Are we
already done
doing
Suspiria.
freaking Mother of Tears?
Oh, you know we'll do Mother of Tears. We'll fucking do Phantom of the Opera, man. You just wait and see, dude.
Jesus.
But next week, Inferno. Very excited for that. You really need to check out the show that we did over at Blood Splatter Chatter about Necromantic. Here's the thing. You don't even have to watch Necromantic. Just watch our review and then decide if you want to watch Necromantic. Horrorfest is just in the middle right now. Like it may be October for you. It's been October for us for a long time. Check us out over at Blood Splatter Chatter. We'll be talking about The Hills Have Eyes, the follow-up to Last House on the Left, and completely wrecking the Wes Craven Fest. Dylan and the crew are going to be talking about Bride of Reanimator, and I'm going to be there for that because that movie is not good, but I like it. So that's going to be an interesting conversation.
Is Jeffrey Combs in that?
Yes.
Nice.
He's not in that one, right? Wait, is he in that one? Yes. All of them are in that one. Not Barbara, but the main dude and like West and the other dude are in that movie.
Nice.
Something Abbott, Dan Abbott? Maybe I'm wrong. And then Combs is also in Beyond Reanimator, which really fucking sucks. And I know that Dylan will do that one day. Jelani, thank you for being here. Final thoughts. What you got coming up?
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't mention this the entire thing, and I don't know if you guys like this movie or not, but I really like I Spit on Your Grave. It's giving that.
That movie wouldn't exist without this movie.
It's true. Very true. And it's revenge on that level. It's absolutely crazy.
Well, so let's think about this. This is a proto slasher, a proto home invasion, and a proto revenge film.
I don't think it's a proto slasher. There's no. I mean, what do you think makes it a slasher?
What do you mean? What do I think makes this a slasher? It's just from their perspective.
With a knife. Yeah.
Is Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer a slasher film?
I mean, it's kind of. I mean, yeah, it is, but I think this is less of a slasher film. The only two people, there's two people that die, but they're like hostages. I don't know. I mean, I get why you would say that, but I don't know.
Well, let's be honest. It goes all the way back to the French film Diabolique, and there's other things, right? Like, what is the first slasher film?
Sure.
Probably a cave fucking painting we haven't discovered yet. You know what I'm saying? But like
Michael Powell's Peeping Tom is up there.
Yeah,
that's a really good one. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are a few out there, but it's absolutely
nice.
Wild. Yeah, Hawa. It's very scary. Yeah, good discussion, guys. Like the fanfare of the Horror Fest. Hopefully, we'll get to do more. Oh, we'll do more. What am I talking about?
Yeah, we still got a lot to go, man. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, Brooks and I do this show called Go Figure Reviews. We're gonna do a top 5 basically horror live stream very soon. So I might invite some of you guys for some horror toys or horror talk. I'm gonna try to get a surprise guest on there who is big time comic book guy. So hopefully he'll be able to share some insight on some of his favorite action figures as well. But we have a couple videos that we just put out. One of which was Dark Side. We had a Dark Side DC Multiverse mega figure. It's pretty cool. It's got its ups and downs. It's all right. And we also did another one with Robbie Live with the web store.
Who?
Yeah, some guy we did. He's in this video, and we talk about Web Store, the cartoon collection version of it. It's not a bad figure. It comes with a cool accessory, that hook there, and
they only bring me on when they want me to bring a vintage toy, right? They only love me for my vintage style, man.
Well, every time I ask you to do something, I'm busy this week. This week I'm talking to blah blah, and this week I'm slapping somebody.
Mr. Big Shot.
Yeah, you're doing your big time thing, so
So are you, man.
Get you. And plus, like, this was months ago, so it's an
I know
video.
we did that video like 3 months ago,
We did
man.
that like 3 months
It's
ago,
just
man.
now showing up. You're gonna
I-
make people think I actually like y'all.
Yeah, a little bit. We're attempting.
Tricks them.
Yeah,
We were so fucking high, by the way, when we did that video, y'all. So y'all need to watch it. Is it out right now? Or
Yeah, it's out right now.
Y'all watch that video. We're high as shit, dude.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna say,
incredibly. In fact,
we are
that
so
was the
high
night.
and done with
that
it.
was
man.
the damn. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that shit
that was
that
it.
made,
Yep,
like,
that
Brooks
was that
almost
shit. We don't
passed
need to
out.
go into details,
Yeah.
but yep, it was that shit, man.
Yeah,
It was really
man.
good. It was legal,
It was
but
legal.
man, it wasn't good.
Woo! I still
Brooks, you're part of Go Figure Reviews, man. You want to add on to that? What you got coming up? Final thoughts?
I never really know what's coming up, to be honest. Like I like to be surprised. But well, I'm sorry. Like I know I let you down. I didn't like this movie as much as you probably thought I was going.
You didn't
to.
let me down. What let me down was that, like, listening to your discussion, you did not give the discussion of a 2.5 movie, my friend.
I agree with that.
On the bright side, Inferno is going to definitely get a much better review from me next week. So you can look forward to that.
Have you seen that one?
Wild.
Yeah, I watched Inferno.
Inferno is wild.
Okay, then. All right.
And abruptly ends like
That's going to be an interesting conversation.
Because it's like, do you compare it to Suspiria or do you compare it to
No,
Argento films?
If
Or do
you
you
compare it to Suspiria, it's dead in the water. But
Yeah.
like, if you're comparing it to his other films, then you have a fighting chance.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
You're in there.
By the way, my girlfriend just watched Dark Glasses for the first time a couple weeks ago. Loved it. I'm telling you, Dark Glasses is a good movie, man. Good movie. Good movie. Speaking of dark glasses, this guy wears dark glasses at night, but not tonight because he wanted Eyes Wide Open for Last House on the Left because it's only a movie, only a movie, only a movie. What'd you think about that segue, Stu? What you got coming up, man?
That a little long-winded, but not your best of the night, but it's all right. We're here at the end of the show. Yeah, thank you guys for having me, dude. It's like, I love Horrorfest, watching all these movies that I haven't seen before, or movies that I haven't seen in a long time, and getting familiar with them, chopping it up with y'all. It's always a blast. So thank you for having me, as always. Ink and Insights, my new show with my boy E, is premiering this Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern on the Dr. Doom's Fan Club YouTube channel. We'll be alternating between my channel and 9-Panel Grid, so make sure you're subbed up to us both. And of course, I will be on Verno's channel Thursday night for Hills Have Eyes, 9:00 Eastern. So check for me there. Again, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
You going Wes Craven crazy. Speaking of Wes
I know,
Craven,
man.
crazy.
Yeah, man.
Verno. Final thoughts. What you got coming up? I'm just going to
buddy.
my man.
Good times, man. This was a fantastic conversation. I love that we're doing this little Wes Craven fest. I'm glad that Dylan joined and he did Nightmare on Elm Street last night. So yeah, that's what I got going on. Hills Have Eyes on Thursday. Excited to talk about that. I know you will be there with us, Mr. Rockin' Robbie. And then also, I just slapped this together with our mutual friend, The Missing Link. What the fuck are we doing? On Wednesday afternoon, we're getting together to talk about 2 2024 movies. One is Cuckoo Kuka, what is the one that just came out? Oh, Oddity. Oddity's on Shudder. It stars the big chick from Game of Thrones with the blonde hair, Captain Phasma, and a lot of people are talking about it. It's got 5 skulls on Shudder. I've been hearing rumbles about it for months now. It's supposed to be like one of the contenders for horror movies of the year. So looking forward to doing that sometime Wednesday afternoon, double feature on Blood Splatter Chatter.
Oh, nice, man. I've heard of Cuckoo. I haven't watched it, and I haven't even heard the other one. So that's cool, man. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Thank you.
Everybody go sub up to Blood Splatter Chatter, one of the greatest horror movie review channels out there. Aside from when we do it on Horrorfest and March Madness.
I disagree.
What about you, Joe? What's coming up for you? Final thoughts. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. Feel free to continue buying Kardak. Let's get it to sell out. For the love of God, just buy it. Haven't bought it yet. Crazy. Anyway,
I bought it, man. I bought it. It's good.
Now I know you. I'm talking to them, you out there. But
he's talking to Stu. Stu, go buy that fucking book. What's wrong with you?
Jesus.
And I'm editing Green Hornet Miss Fury. You can pre-order it now. The interiors in this book are great. Get in on the ground floor with this guy, because he's going to be doing big things in the next couple of years. And you could be there when it's like, oh yeah, I picked that up when he was first doing stuff, when that visionary editor Joe Corallo put him on this Dynamite book. Alex Segura gets a lot of credit for that, but
when you're on your Mafia documentary, it will say visionary comic book editor and writer.
Joey Ducks.
No, but really, it's really good. I'm really happy with this. I think this is the best book I've gotten to edit at Dynamite maybe so far. So, we'll see. It's just the first issue. I have that done, but that'll be out November 27th. So you have to, put it in at your comic shop soon. So.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Joe. Y'all, we're in the midst of Horrorfest. Look at all those movies we've already covered. Go check out any of those previous streams if you missed out. Be here next week for Inferno, the Dario Argento film from like 1980? I think 1980.
1980, baby.
Yeah, follow up to Suspiria. Yeah. Thursday night, I'll be there with Verno and Stu and the crew over at Blood Splatter Chatter to talk about The Hills Have Eyes. Very excited for that revisit. And then Bride of Reanimator, I'll be there as well on Dylan's Horror Show. And Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Central Time, I have Brandy Roderick here, former Playmate of the Year. She's starred in Baywatch alongside Jason Momoa, but she has written and directed her own horror film called Wineville, which I kind of liked, and I'm bringing her onto the show to talk about it. The first of hopefully many horror interviews with people who make horror movies. So there you go.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Well, thank you, man. So we're dipping out. Thank you all so much. Be here next week for Inferno. Check out all the Horrorfest stuff. Stay spooky and pop, boo. And piss your pants. I said piss your pants. That's so fucking weird to say.
Did, bro.
Pop,
it's
boo.
So weird. It's so
weird, man. This movie's fucking
hell of a
weird.
sign off, bro.
Right?
Right?
All the lines.
Piss your pants.
Yeah. 51 lineup of all time going on right now until Halloween.